Oh, that's why you broke my heart. Oh, that's why you broke up our family. I get it now. Thanks for telling me, hon. Not gonna be that. So stop looking for this and understand the infidel may not even know the reason why. This is what I grew through. This is not who I am. That's what I went through, but this is where I'm going. It's all about understanding, hearing a story, acknowledging it, letting them know that I see it, I hear it. I acknowledge your pain, but where you want to go from now.
I'm Cindy Darnell, and welcome to The Erotic Philosopher, the podcast where we examine and explore sex and relationships through social, cultural, political, and other lenses, and find some ways to explore some very diverse erotic quandaries. Today's guest is Renelle E Nelson. Renelle has assisted numerous couples and individuals through the sex, love, and chaos of their relationship to the renewal of love, reconnection, and healing. Renelle combined being a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sex therapist to brand herself as an infidelity and intimacy recovery strategist. She creates a strategic plan to assist committed individuals with reconnecting back to themselves, life, and relationships after betrayal. She's known as the Pleasure Pusher for her mission to have women reclaim pleasure as their birthright. Enjoy this conversation with Renelle E Nelson. Welcome to The Erotic Philosopher.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really glad that you could carve out some time in your schedule to come and talk to us about sex and pleasure and sex therapy. And, I'm really interested in getting to know more about the work that you do and the things that you specialize in. And so before we get into that, I always like to know with sex therapists, why did you become a sex therapist?
I became a sex therapist because I wanted to become who I needed when I was going through or growing through my sexual exploration.
Right.
Back then, it wasn't in many African-American therapists or people such as myself that were educating about sex.
Yeah.
So I kind of just really didn't have anyone to talk to besides peers and family about the educational, not their view, but the educational. So when I decided to go into therapy, I wanted to specialize in sex therapy because one of my teachers said, you know what, we need your voice. We need a Black voice.
Absolutely.
So that really catapulted me into sex therapy.
Yeah. And so because now your specialties are pleasure and orgasm and betrayal, which are really distinct things, Renelle. And so I'm curious about what inspired these particular interests for you.
Well, the sex therapy came about with me being younger and overly sexualized, not knowing my body, just know how to please, really being disconnected from my body.
Knowing how to please others, not knowing how to please yourself.
Yeah. Because we are taught how to please. We are not taught how to receive pleasure,
Right.
and that sex can be beneficial for both.
Yeah.
So that started that orgasm coming from is not really understanding orgasms, not knowing that my body could do this, not knowing this magical thing.
Yeah.
So not knowing orgasm, just knowing about sex, because in any sex education, you don't hear about orgasm. You don't hear about orgasm. You don't hear about pleasure.
Yeah.
The betrayal came from I was habitually betrayed in a relationship, and I didn't know how to stay. So the betrayal kept occurring. And when I decided to move, nobody educated me that the betrayal still exists. Nobody educates you about that the betrayal can affect your personal life, your pleasure,
Right.
your business life.
Yeah.
So when I was researching that and becoming more of a couples therapist, I became an expert because I wanted to educate people on what affairs were, how to stay, how to heal, because we're not hearing those conversations as much, and we're not talking about it in my community.
And I think it's true for all of us who become sex therapists or sexologists in some fashion, that inevitably we are inspired through our own lives and our own stories. That it's one thing to know about sex through a clinical lens, but the personal application of it in terms of passion and feeling and politics and community understanding is crucial. And that's why people in different countries, in different communities, in different situations, sex, it's not a one size fits all thing, is it?
No, it's not at all. Yeah. It's not. And I get so many looks when I tell people, even my couples, sex is not intimacy.
Right.
It can be an intimate act. and everybody look at me like, yeah. And then when I have somebody who want to talk about sex, people want to just jump right into it. I let them know it's levels to this.
Yeah.
First, we have to get you to like each other. Then we got to get you how to communicate with each other,
Right.
because nobody know those layers with sex,
Yeah.
because it's really just a whole vibe of sex.
Yeah.
And then I love teaching about intimacy, because so many times we want to be intimate and we feel like we're not getting it because we're not intimate with ourselves. So most of my time I'm teaching self-intimacy, and people don't understand these are all channels of sex.
I think you've really hit on something really interesting here, Renelle. This notion of self-intimacy as the glue that helps us be able to connect with others, whether it's one other or three others, that knowing ourselves is crucial. Talk us through how you explain self-intimacy and how you see it as working as a tool to help deeper relationships with other people.
I describe self-intimacy as everything you want from somebody else, you give it to yourself. I describe self-intimacy as getting confidently lost in yourself, getting naked with yourself. Before you go out, you go in. So you want to know what turns you on, what's your arousal, what's your likes, what's your dislikes, what are your love languages, what are your fears, what are your triggers, right? So before, it's like the book of you. So if you think about self-intimacy as the book of you, and when you with a partner, think about taking that book and sitting down and showing it to them. This is the book of me, but you have to create that book. So I teach my clients how to create that book, and just know that it's so many to be continued.
Right.
Because people don't understand that you constantly evolve. You evolve or die. And that's what happened where it's chaotic, is when we try to hold on to things that we grew out of.
Right.
That's where the dysfunction, where you used to do this, where you used to do that. And then you are uncomfortable sharing it with your partner, but I changed. So even in that book of intimacy, just realize it's blank pages.
Yeah.
That it's going to go, like how you experience arousal at 25, you might not do at 30.
Exactly.
You might not do at 40. You might not do at 50. Communication is going to change. So being open to explore. So everything you want from somebody else, I want you to give it to yourself.
And what do you see as some of the difficulties that people have with even making those steps? Because in my experience, I see that this is such a common thing, and I agree with you 100% that it's crucial. So I'm curious about how you invite people to start even making changes, moving in that direction.
I invite them to always understand you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. What are you missing out of it? What are you lacking? And if what are you lacking, is it within yourself? I teach people how to own their own shit, right? Because sometimes we can tell what everybody else do, but what do you do there upon yourself?
Yeah.
And this is when betrayal come through. We have been betrayed by others. Betrayal starts with your caregivers, your parents, and then your romantic partner. But the thing is that once you talk about the betrayal of them, but what about the betrayal of self?
Right.
And we don't talk about that.
Right.
So betraying yourself because you don't feel worthy of it, it is going to interfere with your intimacy, your desire, and your pleasure. And nobody's talking about that. Yes, you growing through it, but your defense mechanism is to shut down because you never want to feel that pain. So as you're shutting down, you're putting up a wall, but you also creating a cave.
That is such an important piece of information, I think, for people to understand that what you're talking about, that survival mechanism of going through life, to avoid pain and avoid hurt, which makes sense. Nobody likes being, non-consensually hurt, at least certainly not emotionally hurt. But in the process of protecting ourselves, putting up those walls, as you say, actually really prevents us from digging deeper into ourselves and then digging deeper into other people. So for people who might be afraid of what they find there, if people who are listening might be concerned about being able to feel their feelings and feel that, if you start feeling one thing, it'll open a floodgate. What's been your experience of people starting out on this journey? Do people tend to get completely overwhelmed with it, or is it?
Yes, it's a method to the madness.
Right.
It's the point of, I just say, let's go back, but let's leave the emotion and stick with the facts. I'm a therapist that also is that we don't have to go. I'm really contextual. I don't need the content. I don't want, because content holds emotion. So
So
I'm
what do you
going to
mean by
take you
that?
back.
Content but it holds emotions. What does that mean?
Okay, so we know, so just say content is the who, the what, the where.
Right.
He said this, she said that. The context is the overall picture is, I'm scared of getting hurt.
Right.
I don't need to know, and I don't want to take you back to the exact moment that hurt
Right.
happened.
Right.
That holds a lot of emotion to it.
Right.
But if you say, you know what, I had an argument with my significant other and he said that I was fat.
Right.
I don't need to go in and say, oh, I remember when he opened the door and he shut it in my face. That's going to hold a lot of emotion. So I assist my clients with going through the journey of the context. What happened? I don't need the content, because then you're going to go through this emotion. And remember, the body remembers. The body's going to think you in trauma. The body's going to act in a traumatized state. It's going to play all these movies in your head, and you're going to travel down this path you don't want to go, because the body can't tell if you in fight or flight, reality from the past.
Right.
So I try my best to understand that and keep your body in a normalized state as we journey through this.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be discussed. And so many times I assist my clients with communication, because they say, that's a lot. It's too much. I was like, why don't you take those words about and be like, you know what? It's many things I need to discuss, but right now I need to focus on this. So giving them bite-sized chunks and making them feel more in control.
Yeah, and that's really crucial, that those bite-sized chunks. And what you're saying about people getting caught up in the story and trying to make sense of what we're experiencing. I mean that's a human instinct, is to try and make meaning out of stuff. And it's, what you're saying about, let's prioritize the emotion, let's prioritize the body in this, rather than, unpacking who said what, when, how. It's more focusing on what you felt, you're saying, emotionally and physically at the time, and how that affects you in the present, right?
And what's our plan? Because so many times we want to say what went wrong, but I want to talk about what went right and what can we take from that lesson and move forward. And I always put grow through it. Growing on, because our body reacts to when we say move on. Because moving on means I'm not finding it. No, I want you to grow through it. So just teaching words, because, we give meaning to words, we give emotions to words. So just helping my clients understanding the vocabulary as they go through the journey.
And in your experience, Renelle, this journey, I mean, we know that it ultimately lasts a lifetime, but learning the skills that we need to kind of get moving in that direction. In your experience, how long does it take to start getting these skills, embedded?
That is a really hard question, because it really depends on the person if they're ready to release. A lot of times we have people who this is who they are. Without that, they don't know who they are. So it's more than releasing. It's really recreating themselves. If all I know is sexual trauma, all I know is heart pain, heartache, for you to tell me to let that go, or this has been my story since I was 12. This has been who they are. So I have to assist them with also letting go, but also recreating. So it all depends on that. If you have something like orgasms, it may be a shorter, because it depends on how you are attached to it and what do you want and your motivation. So it's really individual, because I work with people for 2 weeks to 6 months to a year. But the journey continues. Right. I'm only with you for an hour. Right. And like I tell them, you invest in me, I'm with you for an hour. The work is done outside of the session.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when people seek out the help of a professional, it's very easy to believe that, people will tell us their stories, that we fix it for them, and that the work happens in the session. And I agree with you. The changes that folks need to make in order to create more pleasure and have better sex and better intimacy on their own terms, all of that really happens on the outside, and coming to us is an opportunity to keep on track and learn new skills, but the practice and the work happens in between sessions.
That's when the magic happens.
What have you noticed? I mean, in what you were saying about, people separating from some of their pain and trauma, and I think, I really agree with so much of what you're saying. When people's histories, especially around sex, become part of their identity, like I'm a survivor, or I'm this or I'm that. And when you invite them to start separating the story from the identity, so you experience these things in the past, but that's not the entirety of who you are. How do people respond when they even consider that that's an option?
It's kind of shocked. They can't say it. I don't see myself. This is my story. I don't see myself without doing this. But I say, can you see yourself in conjunction with it? I'm not telling you to get rid of it, but how can you put that in a part of you, but nurture the other part? Yeah. So sometimes it's like growing with it. Because sometimes to release it, they're not ready. But how can we grow with it? That's your story, but let's turn a chapter. Yeah. What's the next? What's the next page? Yeah. What's the next chapter? So they can say, okay, so this is chapter 1. I said, okay, let's work on chapter 3.
Right.
So it's all how you word it and let them know that you're not completely getting rid of it. Yeah. You just turn in the chapter. So this is not your saturated language. Like soon as you talk, this is the first thing people know about you, and you present yourself in this way. This is what I grew through. This is that's not who I am. That's what I went through, but this is where I'm going. So it's all about understanding, hearing their story, acknowledging it, letting them know that I see it, I hear it. I acknowledge your pain, but where you want to go from now.
When we invite clients to start creating a bit of space between the history of the person's life and how they see themselves and how they identify, that you're not saying to them, give up the past, or even to forgive people perhaps who've done harm to you. And it does not to say that even ceases to exist. And I think sometimes that can be a really hard thing to separate, is if I make this decision to move forward, does it mean that I'm letting the perpetrators of my pain get away with it?
And I deal with that a lot in betrayal. I say, you're not forgiving them, but you're forgiving the situation so you can grow on, because we can't keep giving power. You gave them power at this end and you giving them power at the other end. How can you take some control back? And I give them the empowerment statements to make them think, you're right. I've been obsessed with this. I've been obsessed with this. I'm like, okay, how can you take your power back? Acknowledge that it happened. You don't have to forgive, but what can you do to release the power that it has over you? And let them come up with their own words, because your body reacts to different words. So forgiveness may make them like, no. So I'm saying, what can you do? I can release it. I can let go of the energy. Wherever they can digest, those are the words we're going to use. And that's what maybe the body is going to be more successful to make it happen. So I'll let them define it, and we create new words. We create new words that feel good in the body, very somatic, because I want you to have an overall good experience. And words are triggering. So take out forgiveness, take out forget. What can we use in place of it?
And do you often find that clients need a lot of scaffolding and support around that? Or is that something that you find they take to once they learn how to do it, they can go and do it quite easily?
Once you work with me, I just bump into their environment and be like, okay, how you feeling? We do check-ins. How you feeling when you say that word? I'm feeling like this. I'm saying, say another word and see how you feel with that. I feel better. Well, choose that word then, right?
Can you give us an example of what that might look like?
I had a client that was triggered with sex. Sex was a triggering word due to sexual abuse and sexual trauma. Right. I said, what can we use instead of sex? So we went through a variety of different words, and we came up with sharing energy.
So instead
she said, so sharing energy says sex with my partner. She cringed. But I said, what about, did you share energy with your partner this weekend? She's like, yes. She was more thin because sex gave her trauma. Sex gave that. Right. Sex is a bad word. Sex is this. But when I share energy, that means I'm involved. It's my energy and their energy. So she loved that word. I took out date night. Some people cringe on date night because date night is thrown on people. Right. You got to have a date night. You haven't have a date night. Take date night out. What would you like? Bonding time.
Yeah.
We can use sharing energy again. And we can be talking to my partner day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We can make it fun. It can be a birthday, whatever you do, it's our partner holiday. We can make it so that it feels good and you excited instead of triggering, because date nights are thrown at us as something we have to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm dreading date night. No, but because it's like everybody prays, you got to have a date night. You got to have a date night, and people dread it and your body react to it. Because remember, the body remembers.
Yeah.
So what do? We change it. You know what? I'm having an exploration session with my partner in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You get more excited about it.
In terms of having exploration sessions, which I think is a really great way to reframe sex, because it also opens up the possibilities of the kind of sex that people are going to have. So depending on what genders we are or what orientations we are, sometimes there can be this sense that we have to start at A, we must start at A, and then we have to go to B, and we can't go straight to D, or this kind of thing. How do you find that, the somatic work that you do helps people understand how to read their bodies in an erotic context?
Because we practice a lot of mindfulness, because what happened is before we get with the couple, we get with ourselves.
Yeah.
So we get to you understand it when you numbing out. We understand that a desire is your body letting you know when you have lack of desire that something's going on in your body or your relationship. So don't always look for your partner.
Right.
So I really teach me before we. So I'm going to get to know myself. That's what couples work or any work I do. Understand yourself, so when you bump into the environment or you in a different space, you check in with yourself, and then you more able to advocate.
Yeah.
Or use assertive language to your partner to explore better, because you're confident in what you want and what you need. And I think that's all systemic, because it's mind, body, soul. So it's all that alignment.
Yeah.
So when I feel aligned, I'm better to advocate for myself. I have boundaries, and I'm more willing to be open to what you need.
Yeah.
Because it's not a battle, and I'm not dependent on you to tell me what I need.
I mean, I think that that's such a common thing that we think when we're in a relationship with somebody, that there's almost this expectation that if we're with the right person, or we're with a soulmate, or we're with somebody who is a good match for us, then everything's just going to fit together effortlessly.
Yeah, and that's the unrealistic expectation. I talk about that judgment, resentment, and assumptions are 3 things that will break up your relationship quicker than an affair, right?
Say that again. Judgment, resentment, and
assumptions.
Talk us more through those things.
Assumption is thinking that you know what your partner would do. Judgment is judging them from their past behavior. Expectations is putting unrealistic expectations on them.
Yeah.
And these are 3 things that I found out in my line of work that all come up in relationships.
Yeah. Why do you think those things are so embedded in the way that we connect with other people?
It gives us power. We can't control everybody else. But if I have these things and I consume this and I can do this, I'm powerful.
Right.
Because a relationship, you're powerless. And we don't like that word.
Right.
You don't want to feel powerless. So even if I say, remember the things you can control and you can't, people like, no. We try to control, just like with betrayal. Like when we deal with betrayal, I let my couples know, and the partner is, you're responsible for loving and supporting your partner. You're not responsible for keeping them faithful. And they just don't like that, because they think, no, if I can control it, I can own it. And then it's like, I have to. That's why so many times dealing with betrayal, we look up in ourselves, because we got to have some control. We look up on ourselves. We look up on the third party. We blame, because blame is powerful. But we never think like, wow, let's look at the bigger aspect of an affair.
Yeah.
And they don't want to, because it's uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And the cheat is a choice.
Yeah, right. I mean, and in your experience and in the communities, obviously, that you serve, which are the communities, you're going to know best, how frequently occurring are these betrayals?
Betrayals, an affair is one aspect, and that's really going outside your relationship to have sex. A betrayal can be emotional. You cooked a pie for your mom and then cooked one for me. You called your sister and told her about your good news, but you didn't tell me. It's many betrayals that happen throughout the relationship. Right. An affair is a sexual affair going outside. Yeah. Betrayal can be easy as, you put your mother in the front seat and put me in the back.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah.
a betrayal can be like that. Or when you came home, you didn't kiss me, but you said something to the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So a betrayal is just that what you feel that you have a contract agreement and it's broke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So betrayals can be many things, and that's what we're talking about. It's many betrayals that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talk about infidelity, that is the sexual betrayal.
And so being able to recognize that when we start noticing uncomfortable feelings rising within us, if we're in partnerships where perhaps we don't identify the emotion as betrayal initially, but we can feel that something is upsetting us. We can feel that something is getting on our nerves. We can feel that something's not quite right. That this notion of betrayal can be that expectations perhaps you had that were implicit at the start of a relationship. Well, of course a marriage is supposed to be like this, or of course a relationship is supposed to be like this. Or for people even who are in open relationships, that there's, even though it's an open relationship, there still has to be agreements and understandings, and that betrayal can still happen in all kinds of relationships, including open relationships, huh?
Yeah. We can talk about, and that all makes sense. And then I'm always the one to shine a light about the betrayal of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
How you betray yourself, because like you said, you deal with these small betrayals in your relationship and you deal with them, but they hurt.
Yeah.
So that's self-betrayal because you don't feel like you advocate. But I can deal with these small betrayals, but if you have sex with somebody, that's it. But why are you accepting any betrayal? Why are you not having those assertive conversations like, hey, and not to the point that aggressive, but assertive mean, you know what, this hurt.
Yeah.
How can we make it better? Identify it and just try to get support to how to make it better. We let these little things go, and then we are more reactive than proactive. And that's what I teach. Let's be more proactive. Let's plan. You know what? Life is going to happen. How can we prepare for it? We have disaster relief and we got this pre-planning, but what about for our marriage?
Right.
If you feel like I'm not meeting your needs intimately or sexual, what can we do to talk about it before it we react to it? So having these things set up, but again, you got to know yourself.
Right. You got to know what you want, what you're hoping for, and then also to have partners meet you in that so you can work on it together, where it's not just you versus your partner trying to convince the other one to come to your side, because that way, we're still not dealing with the resentment piece while everyone's, saying, but what about me? What about me? Then there's no we. And that can make it more difficult, huh?
And just really understanding, especially when we come to desire, it's not your problem, it's our concern. And how to approach that. Right. Because we take it upon ourselves. We throw lube on it.
Right.
Everybody's you just can't throw lube on everything. Even though I say communication is the lubricant for relationships, you just can't throw lube on everything. Some things you're going to have to hold back, feel it, understand it, and discuss it.
Yeah. And part of that, I think, is getting used to being uncomfortable, because this is really uncomfortable work to do in the beginning.
It's very uncomfortable, but I take that word out, because uncomfortable make you feel something in your body, right? It'd be like, it's some bumps in the road, but I can do it. So I'll just look at different words and how people react. Like, I don't say, oh, I got to have a comfortable conversation. I'm like, why would something insightful be uncomfortable? Let's come up with a different word.
Yeah.
And they come up with a different word. I got to have this difficult conversation. Why is it difficult if it's insightful and on the other side, resolution? You're right. So let's think of another word for it. Let's get away. Difficult. Hard. Let's take those words out.
Right.
And then it releases your body. Find something in. You can say, I got to have a purple conversation. Right? And that you don't react to your body like, purple, what?
So using what you're saying, like using a more neutral word, or even an affirming word to
that you and your partner, I'm not saying the outside world, you can say, baby, we need to have a banana.
I love that.
Right? But you and your partner know what that means, and y'all both know the banana is hard, but y'all gonna peel it and it's gonna be soft. You can do all this stuff within yourself. You create your reality. And that's when and you control it. And that's what I want to do, is give my clients control of their relationship and their pleasure.
Yeah. Wow. And that is so where the center of our work is needed. That's so crucial to helping people move forward in sex and relationships and intimacy is locating the power and taking it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, Renelle, I've got a letter here from a listener. Would it be okay if we unpacked it together?
I'm ready.
All right. Dear philosophers, I'm a woman in an 8-year marriage and 12 years together that's mostly been fulfilling. I met my husband at work, and over the years, he's been a steady companion and a great partner and father to our children. 2 years ago, I joined a dating site anonymously and started meeting up with men just for sex. I've increasingly become distant from my husband, and he's heard about that and tells me that he wants us to go to therapy. The trouble is, if we start therapy, this will come out. I am both feeling guilty about what I've done and what I've been doing, and I also don't want to give it up. I'm not sure how to deal with this situation that I've created. Do the philosophers have any suggestions? And that's from Michelle. So, Renelle, what do you think about that? What's your first reaction hearing that letter?
I just want to first thank Michelle for being truthful and honest and transparent in her letter. Now I need her to do that with herself.
Yeah.
And later do it with her partner.
Right.
I would evaluate the relationship far as if it's any abuse or trauma that she's afraid to tell her partner
Right,
that.
that's a good point.
But if, because I don't really like disclosure and if it's going to interfere with your safety, I'm going to ask Michelle that I think that she need to have some individual sessions because there's a lot of stuff she needs to unpack because there's no way that she should be in a relationship that she can't talk about her sexual desires.
Yeah.
I think that that's one thing is to get some individual sessions and let her partner know that.
Yeah.
And then afterward, her individual therapist will assist her in letting her partner know. And that can go into a couples mode.
Yeah.
You cannot start a relationship on betrayal. You say, what would he say? He going to be dishonest, but the relationship is dishonest anyway.
Yeah.
He knows we're not really even knowing. So I was just like, for her to know, because there's a lot of components she needs to explore in herself because she has these desires and she's saying she wants to keep it going.
Yeah.
So she needs to do a lot of exploration about what she wants to desire. And she only talked about the things that her partner does for her, but not to her.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's another thing to really just think about. You know, he's this, he's that, but she never mentioned her. So maybe sometimes I know it's hard for us to think that our relationships evolve.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even, it's not a point that we even are in our relationships anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes we decide to uncouple or change the dynamics of the relationship.
Right. Right.
So these are all things I feel that she should work with an individual therapist or coach.
Yeah.
Mainly a therapist because there's a lot of unpacking.
Yeah.
A coach can take you to once you get those goals.
Right.
But I recommend Michelle really before she work on she need to work on her.
And do you see this a lot in your work? Couples or one person in a couple having these affairs, and we know that affairs are pretty common. But then there's often a reluctance to give them up or a reluctance to want to have to change it, that people want to sort of have their cake and eat it too.
It's the point, and then it's powerful.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I see clients not give their partner room for consent. They assume
Right.
that their partner doesn't want this. And even if that partner don't understand that it's not in the end of a relationship and can be evolvement of the relationship, that we need to redefine a relationship. Because if they not on board and it's consensual, you're going to redefine it anyway. If you continue to cheat, you redefine it anyway.
Yeah.
So we might as well talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? So we might as well talk. So you think you're avoiding stuff and you're not. You're just delaying it.
Yeah, right. And so
No?
have you seen, some of the reasons that people cheat? I mean, certainly in the work that I've done, my observation has been it's not because they don't love their partners anymore necessarily, but it's often because they've lost a sense of connection with themselves and being able to have sex with, in Michelle's case, strangers or other situations where they have ongoing extra infidelities, that it's, that person outside of the marriage or the person outside of the relationship allows them to experience a side of themselves that feels stifled in the relationship.
Because we know it's a variety of different affairs. We got the split self affair. We got the avoidant affair. We got emotional affairs. So it's not really a cookie cutter, but the key to it is the point of self-intimacy.
Yeah.
With my research, I'm learning more and more that when the lack of self-intimacy is the catalyst for affairs.
Yeah.
The lack of communication, attachment disorder.
Yeah.
A lot of things are those. So yes, it is. That's the hardest part, telling the hurt partner that it's not because of love, it's not because of sex. And it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And they rebel against that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I see it a lot, but it's the point that we need to educate about it. We need to understand. We need to be more, again, proactive than reactive. We need to talk about attraction in our day-to-day lives. We need to talk about when something stop avoiding conversations because it may hurt.
Yeah.
We need to stop. We need to be very transparent before it get to that part. And a lot of it, again, is with yourself first.
Yeah.
And then before you can, in order to share it with your partner.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's hard when I have the hurt partner and the infidel in the room, because the hurt partner want answers. And I say, even if they give you the answer, it's not going to make you feel better.
Right.
It's not going to, oh, that's why you broke my heart. Oh, that's why you broke up our family. I get it now.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me, hon. It's not going to be that.
Yeah.
So stop looking for this and understand the infidel may not even know the reason why. Right. And that's why, to heal from infidelity or betrayal, you have to have an openness of understanding that you might not get the answer.
And even if you got the answer, it wouldn't.
It's not gonna make you feel better.
Yeah, it wouldn't remove the pain.
Or you say, I'm having sex with her because you won't do this.
Yeah.
Do that make you feel better? No, because then you're gonna say, but I did it that one time on your birthday. You just ready to rebuttal instead of understand.
Right.
So we always talk about communication, but we never talk about communication is consensual. We never talk about the part of communication that is the catalyst for everything is effective listening. People get that whole part. All we talk about is how to talk. We never talk about how to listen.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree 100%. Renelle, your wisdom is just brilliant, and I really want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us here on The Erotic Philosopher. I've got your links to your site, and all your social media is going to be in the show notes. Is there anything that you've got coming up that you're really excited about?
I'm excited that I launched my pleasure agenda, and what this is, Renelle in agenda form. This is me putting pleasure as a priority back in your relationship. I have bonding questions. I have communication examples. I have reminders. We talk about date night, like lingerie day, butt night day. I have all this packed in this because I want you to make pleasure a priority in your relationship. And this is the agenda to assist you to do it.
And so where do folks get this?
You can do it on my website, the Explore Her Collective.
Okay.
Or you can go to my RenelleE.Nelson.com, and in the shop, you're going to get to all my products.
Okay, so it's there in your shop. So that's the pleasure agenda, and we'll be linking to that in the show notes for folks who want to enjoy that. And is that program for any specific gender or any kind of person?
No. I put it like it's for relationships.
Okay.
So it's for couples. So when for your exploration time, your bonding time, you sit there and you just, because we can plan for sex.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to schedule sex. We need to do that. And it takes be very mindful of how you moving throughout the month, because I have gentle reminders. Make sure you touch today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So gentle reminders, I said that you can use with your relationship, because sometimes we put our relationships on autopilot.
Yeah.
I want to take it
They're
off of that
and
make it a priority.
Good. So that's a great project and great product for people to help get them connected to you and the style of work that you do without necessarily having to have those sessions and be able to guide themselves at home. So it's really important too for people who live across different time zones where connecting with us is going to be difficult. Renelle Nelson, again, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really love the idea that Renelle shared with us about changing words that don't suit us and tapping into that idea that we don't have to stick with a storyline just because it's the one that's always been fed to us, that if words don't work for us and situations don't work for us, that we can simply change them, and change them just by thinking about them, change them by changing the language that we use, and recognizing that issues and problems in sex and relationships are not insurmountable. Yes, they take work, but we're all capable of making these changes as long as we put in the effort and we have the information that we need to make these changes. Check out the links in the show notes to Renelle's program, and reach out to Renelle if you want to speak to her more about her wisdom that she's so generously shared with us here on The Erotic Philosopher. And I hope you're enjoying listening to The Erotic Philosopher as much as I'm enjoying bringing it to you each week. I love being able to speak to these incredible thought leaders in the realm of sex and relationships. And if you're enjoying that too, please rate and review us. Your ratings and reviews boost our visibility to new listeners. And this is so important to getting this information out there to people who need it and who also, just like you, enjoy it. And speaking of things that you enjoy, if you're enjoying listening to me, head on over to my website, cindydarnell.com. That's CyndyDarnell.com, where you can find out ways to work with me, either as an individual, part of a couple, or part of a multi-partner relationship. I also offer support to clinicians and professionals looking to expand their work around sex, relationships, pleasure, and power. You'll also enjoy my suite of online classes, pre-recorded, ready to go for you to watch at home. Subscribe to my newsletter for your free Reboot Your Sex Life workbook. I really aim to be sure there's something for everyone. Take care, enjoy, and thanks for listening.